If you're looking for a nice, juicy steak to cook in your own kitchen, there are plenty of options. But if you're trying to get your beef fix, some cuts are harder to get right than others. These are the 7 hardest steaks to cook at home. All-round steaks are found on the back of the cow in a heavily muscled area near the rear legs. Because these muscles are used for frequent movement, this part of the cow has a low fat content, which means the beef isn't as tender. As a result, these tougher cuts can be more difficult to cook than steaks with well-marbled muscle and fat. Additionally, eye-round steak is often more affordable than other cuts, which makes it a desirable option for many home chefs. But tread carefully. When cooked incorrectly, eye-round steak is chewy and tough, resulting in an unpleasant dining experience. Certain cooking methods like braising, sous vide, or using a slow cooker can make eye-round steak more tender and enjoyable to eat, but they require a lot of time, patience, and practice to perfect. Marinating the steak beforehand can also help tenderize the beef. As Ashley Lonsdale, ButcherBox chef in residence, explained, the salt in the marinade will help tenderize the meat, and you can introduce more aromatics. Like the slow cooking methods, marinating your eye-round before cooking requires more time and forethought. If you want a quick, easy dinner to put on the table, eye-round is not it. Skirt steak is cut from an area on the cow's belly known as the plate. This section of the animal is much fattier than the heavily muscled round, which might make skirt steak seem like a great candidate for home cooks. However, the cut is peppered with connective tissue that can be tough and chewy once cooked. Because it is cut from the belly in a single piece, skirt steak can also be an awkward shape. In addition to being thin and narrow, it can be up to 2 feet long. The thinness of the cut is also one of the factors that makes it difficult to cook. Skirt steak is most flavorful and tender when served medium or medium rare. Even when cooked just a minute too long, the result will be tough and dry.
Such a thin cut, then you need to sear it very fast and very hot.
Achieving this nuance at home on a grill, under a broiler, or in a pan can be a very difficult feat for inexperienced home chefs. A suitable alternative to skirt steak is flank steak. As Lonsdale explained, flank steak is a great cut. It's easy to identify the grain to slice against when it's time to serve, and it can feed multiple people. All chuck cuts come from the cow's neck and shoulders. Like the round, this area is filled with muscle and connective tissue, which limits the fat content. While chuck is often turned into ground beef, it can also be purchased in larger steaks for a steal, but you'll want to proceed with caution. Also known as the shoulder steak or London broil, chuck eye steak can be seared in a pan or on a grill, and then cooked over low heat until it's about medium rare. If cooked too long, you'll be left with a chewy, tough bite. Barry Sorkin, owner of Smoked Steak, recommends home chefs avoid heavily muscled cuts like chuck eye steak because of their difficulty to perfect. He explained, for the home cook, I recommend cooking steaks that are naturally tender, boneless, well-marbled, and relatively uniform. These characteristics offer the less experienced cook a good deal of forgiveness, and even cooking, and are suited for a number of different cooking methods. Often called California's cut, tri-tip steak is an often overlooked steak cut from the bottom of the sirloin found on the cow's belly. Earning its name from its distinctive shape, this steak has very little fat and is always boneless. Tri-tip is sometimes sold with a fat cap on one side, requiring extra trimming once purchased. This prep step alone is a hurdle for home chefs, as the more desirable cuts are typically ready to go right from the butcher. Because of its asymmetric size, it is also difficult to cook consistently, often when the steak comes out of the oven or off the grill. The smaller end is cooked more than the wider, thicker end, which tends to still be on the rarer side. While this may be an advantage if you're cooking for a crowd with varied preferences, this uneven result is often a negative when preparing tri-tip for a small group or individual. Even if cooked correctly, tri-tip steak can still be chewy and tough if it's not cut properly. This steak has 2 different grains, with some running vertically and the rest running horizontally. Cutting the cooked steak along this intersection, and then cutting it into smaller pieces from there, is vital to ensuring you have tender steak. It can, however, be a difficult task for those who aren't familiar with the cut or aren't comfortable butchering. Bone-in ribeye is cut from the cow's lower ribs, with part of the rib bone left attached. Many people prefer to purchase bone-in ribeye versus the boneless steak because they feel the bone infuses additional flavor. While the jury is out on whether or not the bone actually adds flavor to the steak, one thing is clear: leaving the bone in makes the steak much easier for home chefs to mess up. Sorkin agrees that bone-in cuts aren't the best option for home chefs. He observed, bones can add significant cost to your raw product and make it more difficult to cook the steak evenly. Bones can insulate the steak from the heat source, making the meat around the bone cook at a slower rate than the rest of the steak. With bone-in cuts like ribeye, home chefs may run into issues where the meat closest to the bone is underdone or even raw, while the meat around the steak's edges is cooked properly. Because of the touchy nature of this cut, it's best left to the experts. Like skirt steak, hanger steak is a thin cut that comes from the plate of the cow. However, there's only one hanger steak per cow, so it can be more difficult than other cuts to find at chain supermarkets. This low supply also makes it a less sustainable cut than other popular steaks like flank steak or even ground beef. Though naturally tender with a good fat content, hanger steak has a membrane that runs down the center of the cut. When this membrane is left in the steak, it causes the final product to be chewy and tough. Once the membrane is removed, hanger steak can be cooked rare to medium, depending on your personal preference. However, getting the perfect internal temperature for your preferred cook can be a challenge to time on such a thin cut. Even just a minute or two longer on the grill or in the pan can cause the steak to be too tough to enjoy. If you take it off when it's too rare, the meat will have an overly soft texture. Striking that perfect middle ground is extremely difficult for those who are less experienced cooking steak. T-bone steaks get their name from the distinctive T-shaped bone that runs through the center of the cut. Sourced from the cow's short loin, the T-bone has a different type of steak on each side: strip steak and tenderloin.
You better be thinking T-bone steak medium rare.
Like other bone-in cuts, the meat closest to the bone in a T-bone steak also cooks at a different rate. The bone insulates the surrounding meat, making it heat up more slowly, which can lead to uneven levels of doneness along both sides of the steak. Because there are two different cuts, it's important to choose a cooking method that will cook both sides at the same rate, such as a grill with 2 heat zones. Instead of a cut like a T-bone, Sorkin recommends bone-free alternatives. He explained, "I like a ribeye. Its natural tenderness, rich flavor, and good marbling deliver great flavor and tenderness and will stay juicy even if slightly overcooked.